The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar entitled A New Era in RMR Through Video-Based Intrusion Detection, sponsored by Agent V. I'm Shannon Murphy, ESA's Vice President of Sales and Marketing, and I will help to facilitate the webinar today. First, I'd like to cover a couple housekeeping notes before we all get started. All callers will be muted for the duration of the call. Please be sure to use your question log to submit questions, and all of the questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Additionally, a recording of the webinar will be available in the resource library on esaweb.org. I would like to introduce today's speakers. AJ Frazier is Vice President of Business Development with Agent Video Intelligence. Mr. Frazier has extensive product and business development experience with complex voice, data, video, products, and services. Mr. Frazier boasts detailed knowledge of the technical challenges and customer adoption hurdles related to bringing new cloud technologies to market, having launched multiple cloud-based services during his career. Brandon Niles, Director of Acadian Monitoring Services, is also joining AJ today. Mr. Niles has been with Acadian Monitoring Services for more than 5 years and is responsible for the management of all monitoring departments, handling all legal matters and the strategic development of key partnerships inside and outside of the security industry. AJ and Brandon, thank you very much for joining us today. And AJ, I'll turn it over to you to take us through the presentation.
Great, thank you, Shannon. What we're going to cover here today, we're going to try to address several broad range of topics ranging from some technical issues all the way through to business models related to using video systems as an intrusion detection device. So for today's session, we're going to be focused on CCTV camera networks. These are generic, typical security camera networks. And the three areas we're going to try to address are how can video intrusion be added to these types of CCTV networks, both new and existing networks. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between video detection versus traditional intrusion alarms. To do a little bit of comparison and contrast. And then we'll talk about, Brendan will finish this up with, a discussion about how you sell prevention versus reaction. And what we're really trying to do here, in fact, we didn't set this up so much as a product call, but recognizing in the industry we're all looking for new ways to generate revenue sources, and using cameras as an intrusion device actually gives you new ways that dealers can sell services to their customers, either to new customers or to expand the revenue they produce monthly by adding additional services to their existing customers. As Shannon mentioned, you can submit questions anytime during the session today, and what we'll do is at the end we'll collect those questions and we'll answer as many as we can with the time that we have remaining. So let's get right into it. Sorry if I'm speaking to a topic that many of you already know, but what is video intrusion? I tried to make it pretty simple. We're going to take a camera, it could be any camera in theory, and that camera is going to be used to detect people and vehicles and then generate alerts. For the monitoring industry, I like to say it's if people or vehicles are in places they're not supposed to be, detect them and get them out of there. That's what we do with video intrusion. Now, in this era, what we're actually doing is we're using software to do what operators really don't do very well. So I can have software looking at that video 24/7, 365 days a year. It never takes a break. Software never gets tired or distracted. A lot of people actually miss this, but software is better at detecting certain parts of images than people are. So for example, if you have a night scene and somebody's going into, let's say, a car dealership lot, but they're out at the edge of that camera, they might actually be very small in the field of view. An operator is just not going to notice that. Software doesn't care. It could be small, big. Software is software. It just keeps running. And then good software knows the difference between a person and an animal. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So let's talk a little bit about ways that intrusion is added to video. I didn't make this up. This is sort of a quick snapshot of what I see in the industry. So first, a method that's been around for a long time, you can use what's built into the cameras to do detection. That really actually breaks down into two categories. Camera OEMs have motion sensing and line crossing in their cameras. I'm going to be a little bit fair here on this session. Let me just say the mileage varies between different camera manufacturers. Some actually have pretty decent motion sensing that is better than just strictly detecting pixels moving. Frankly, some camera manufacturers, their motion sensing is just so bad it's not even worth turning on. Another way that built-in cameras can detect, or cameras can detect using built-in logic, is through third-party software. Little background on Agent VI. We're actually a 14-year-old company. We were one of the first commercial companies in the marketplace. If you're doing anything in high-end enterprise, we're actually ranked by IMS as the global leader in analytics, and we're Access Communications' only gold-level ADP analytics partner. What that really means is we can put our software in a number of different manufacturers' cameras, and instead of using their in-camera motion sensing and line crossing, you can actually use our advanced analytics. That's something we've done for years. So we have ways that we can operate in cameras. The second method that people use, and this in the monitoring industry is actually very popular, add-on appliances that pull the video from the camera, analyze it, and then perform detection. So if I looked at 1 and 2 in this slide, examples of 1 could be Agent VI, but it could also be a Hike Vision inline camera crossing. Hanwha could use their inline crossing. Bosch obviously has in-camera analytics. And then on the bullet 2, you have companies like Avigilon and the Rialto product, which actually I understand has just been discontinued. We'll see what they do next with that. But that's an appliance that's been used in the monitoring industry for a number of years. Check Video has an appliance. There's a bunch of different companies out there have been offering appliances. We also have an appliance. So that's your second option. And then there's a third option, which I really note here to differentiate it a little bit, which is a camera PIR combination. And really, to be fair, this doesn't fit today's topic because that's really a camera PIR combination is really just a motion sensor with a camera attached for verification. So you're really using a motion sensor, and then you have the convenience of having a camera built in that can then verify, no, that's a squirrel, or no, that's a dog, or no, that's the trash caught in the fence, or whatever it might be. But that third option is largely camera PR combinations. It kind of fits into its own category. So let's talk a little bit more. In terms of our product line, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this since I've already mentioned Agent VI. Our intrusion detection software can be embedded in cameras. That's a great solution, as you'll see in a minute. I'm actually going to show a live system in about 5 minutes. The embedded camera is a great option for hanging a single camera and just having it work. But we also have an appliance that can work with any camera, Anova for RTSP. That appliance can handle up to 40 cameras. And that's a great solution for new IP build-outs, particularly for multi-camera sites like car dealerships, industrial sites. But actually, we didn't even think about this until some of our partners started using it this way. A lot of DVRs, including a lot of the newer HD analog DVRs, actually have RTSP streaming out of them, so you can actually use our appliance with HD DVRs in some cases as like an upgrade path. Very clever. Kudos to the partners that figured that out. We didn't think of it until they came back and said, hey, look what we did with your appliance. And the final example for analog takeovers, our solution can also work with encoders, primarily access encoders, which once again gives you a very quick takeover opportunity. But I haven't even told you what Anova is. I've told you how you can connect it. I haven't told you what it is. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between video detection and traditional intrusion alarms. And it's not really a one versus the other per se. It's really more you can do some things with one that you can't do with the other. So let's take a look. This slide actually reads better from right to left. By the way, we're an Israeli company, so we put all our best content on the right. So what do you see with traditional contact alarms and PIRs? Well, first off, they typically, certainly if it's a contact alarm, it needs some kind of a fixed barrier, a door, a window, a gate, something that can actually open or close a contact. It detects when it's open. Very reliable. electronics haven't changed in 30 years in this regard. A contact open with a little magnetic reed still sets off an alarm. Basically, if it's maintained well, it's extremely reliable. PIRs also been around for a long time. They have a little bit more limitations. Unlike a contact, they don't require a door closure or window or gate, but they do have some issues. Limited range is one of their challenges. They can't differentiate typically between people, vehicles, and animals. So what ends up happening is you need very careful placement, or you end up with high false alarm rates. That said, PIRs function very well in a lot of environments. They're widely deployed. But when you get to outdoor environments in particular, they get pretty tricky. So let's compare that to the left, which is video intrusion. So with video intrusion, and by the way, this is not just Agent VI, this slide's generic. With video intrusion, it can work in outdoor environments. I'll give you some caveats in a second. You can use video from any camera, depending on whose solution you use. Video is immediately available to track an incident. And I wanted to point this out. There's a lot of talk in the industry about video verification. But if you think about it, if you use your video for intrusion detection, it is, by definition, instantly verified because it's the video that creates the source of the alarm. That also means you are immediately connected to the camera to do incident tracking and follow-up. It can detect incidents before break-ins. Now, this is something Brendan's going to talk about in just a few minutes. But part of this whole philosophy that we wanted to bring up in this webinar and then in other sessions we're having, for example, at ESX coming up here in June, is that when you use video intrusion, you're actually pushing the barriers, the detection barriers, out beyond the building, or maybe even out beyond the cars if it's a car dealership lot. So now what you do is, instead of selling reaction, like a door opening, a window being broken, you're actually selling prevention. So for example, you can detect somebody approaching a building and you can do a talk down, or you can do something else to try to prevent the person from creating the damage, which now gives you a true new benefit you can sell to your customers. Because you know what, it's great that you can detect someone breaking into a business and dispatch the police. But in the morning, they still have to file a police report. They might still have to close their business, take inventory. If it's a bad break-in, they might still have $1,000 in damage to replace a window or a door that's severely damaged. So the video intrusion, the best way to look at it is it extends your boundaries of detection out beyond what you do with traditional PIR contacts. Now, so I don't sound like I'm loading up the argument. Let's talk about some of the bads of video intrusion. I like this is real video footage. We've been around a long time. Agent VI knows analytics. We also know false alarms. So I love this with dealer meetings. Verify this. They usually laugh and roll their eye. The traditional problem with video detection is it's not only complicated to set up, but it has traditionally been pretty bad at differentiation, meaning false alarms. Unless, the only place I know where, like if you look here, pets detection, you don't get paid for that. Nobody gets paid to detect a tree or a bush shaking. Shadows and reflections, you don't get paid for that. Deer and wildlife, the only place I know where deer and wildlife matter is one security director for a very large power utility I know who's a big hunter. And he actually literally told Agent VI he wants to detect all the deer outside of the perimeter from his substations because they're in remote areas, and he has actually hunting rights for some of those. So, but with that one exception, nobody's getting paid their $50, $60, $70 a month to go and say that's a deer, we should ignore it. Well, we learned this the hard way. Agent VI, as I said, we've been in business a while. Probably 3 to 4 years ago, we started doing a lot of very, very large central monitoring projects in Europe. And our customers, they were being successful with it, but they came back to us and they said, look, we really need something a little bit different. And here's what we did. We developed Anova specifically for the central monitoring market and specifically to deal with 2 requirements. One, we wanted it to be easy to install and maintain. That means no manual configurations, no masking, no tweaking. If anybody's ever done traditional analytics, at this point you're rolling your eyeballs and you're thinking, yeah, right, AJ, sure, no manual configuration, no masking, no tweaking, right. We also want it to be completely automated, continual scene learning. So when the trees, start to put out leaves in the spring, you don't have to go in and change anything, any settings. And in the fall, when the leaves are gone and it snows in the winter, you don't have to go make any changes. So step one, completely automated, easy install, maintain. Step two, this was sort of the holy grail. When our customer told us that, we thought, really? So you want it to be completely automated, and they said, basically, we want no false alarms. And they explained the math to us. One false alarm per camera per day on 1,000 cameras is almost an entire shift of an operator just clearing false alarms. And that's before you even get to the soft cost of fatigue and operators just burning out because they're sitting there clearing, infinite alarms during like a rainstorm where you might get 100, false alarms. So no false alarms in bad weather, under any conditions. Need to be able to tell the difference between people, vehicles, animals, trees, bushes. This is what we set out to do with Anova. Now, if you're still with me at this point, I'm going to do the unthinkable. I'm actually jumping over, if you're seeing on your screen right now. So I've just switched out of my PowerPoint. I'm now looking at a live 100% running Agent VI system. And what you'll see here is I've been set up as if I was a monitoring company. So this is Anova's demo for AJ. And down along the left, you'll see that I have actual 100% live working cameras. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what I'm about to show you with the demo. Last May, just wanting to play with the service, I contacted my friends at Axis because we do a lot with Axis, so I get basically free cameras when I ask for them. So I said, hey, why don't you send me one of those really nice P1405? Those are pretty nice looking cameras. So they sent me one. It took about 2 hours to run the cabling through my attic, drill a hole in the front of my house, and install the camera. Now here's where the Anova part comes in. I plugged in the camera. It took me 5 minutes to come down the ladder, go into my house, go downstairs to my basement office, and by the time I got down to my basement office, I'm now switching to this P1405, the camera was actually running and was already configured and ready for setup. I went in, and I'm showing you exactly what I did. I went to my Rules tab, and I just drew this box here. I didn't even get clever. If you can see it on your screen, you'll see there's a box covering, it looks like about 50–60% of the screen. You'll see there's bushes in the lower corner. There's a tree. Actually, if your screen is refreshing fast enough, you'll see that today, this is a live view, by the way, that today it's very windy here in Virginia, so this tree is blowing pretty hard. But that's all I did. I didn't set up any mask. I didn't go tweak any profile, height, width, nothing like that. I just literally said, I care about anybody approaching my house in this front zone. So let's see what's going on here at the Fraser household. This part of the demo, by the way, is always a little bit interesting because, I have kids, old and young, and let's just say they're not always doing what they should be doing in front of my house. So here we go. Let's see what's going on. So here this morning, all right, checking up on my family. I'm going to play this. All right. Wife taking daughter to school, which means daughter's running late because daughter's supposed to take the bus. So you can see the trees going crazy there. Here I can see if I go back last night. Let's see what's going on. Actually, this looks like me coming back from picking up a young daughter from something. All right, so there's an IR view of me, including a bright burned out image of the camera. Let's see, here is my neighbor. They have a neighbor that lives back behind. There we go, detecting them running across the tower. That's the neighbor's kid, must be late for school, I guess. So what's interesting here is if I start scrolling up and down through this, you will see that without any masking, without any tweaking, I've got basically 2 days without any false alarms. Now this is an example of my embedded camera. Now just for kicks, just because I was feeling a little bit like showing off here today. This is me, not the best view of me, by the way. This is me about 30 minutes ago while Shannon and Brendan were sitting here talking, getting ready for this call. I walked in here. They didn't know it. I muted them. I walked out my front door. And then if I go to my back camera, I actually have one of my appliances that I set up this morning. And then I hooked it up to my back camera. And you can see here's me coming around the back of my house. Once again, you see the trees blowing. You can actually see that for some of these images, very hard shadows. That's another thing. Once again, no masking, no tweaking. Here's the rule I actually set up about 10 a.m. this morning for my backyard, just if anybody moves in that back area. So what we've been able to do is develop a system that can work without tweaking, but also has eliminated the false alarm problem. Now, let me tell you how we do that before people start accusing me of voodoo or BS or whatever it is you might want to claim. We're actually using something called deep learning. Now, if you've been around anything in the analytics industry, you've heard this term before. In fact, deep learning is a term that goes back to really the 90s in data analysis. And what deep learning means is instead of teaching the system what something looks like what a person looks like versus a deer, you actually teach the system by showing it valid images of a person. And then over time, the more it sees, the more it learns, and it gets just like the human brain. It eventually becomes very, very good at identifying what is a person, what is a vehicle. We've now added classifications for bicycles and motorcycles on top of that. And anything that does not classify as that, like a deer or a dog or a rabbit, like we have a lot of animals that come to the front of my home, automatically gets flagged as a false alarm. Now, the key to why we're able to do deep learning, and a lot of competitors that talk about deep learning, their systems don't work as well, is we also were able to combine deep learning, which is a technology that's been around for a long time, but we were able to combine it with our patent from 2003. And what we do is at the edge, at the customer site, we run a piece of software either in the camera or in our appliance that basically processes the video. So I never need to remove the video from the site. If you want to store video, put a DVR out there. That's not our business. We process the video on the site. We then only push up to the cloud what we call feature information. So for example, on my home cameras, that's about 10 kilobits. On a bad day, it's 15 kilobits of feature information that we send to the cloud. And then in the cloud, I run a secondary algorithm that does automatic calibration, deep learning, and false alarm rejection. So what I pass to the monitoring center is just the 8-second verification clip without all the false alarms. The reason we did this was we wanted to be able to give dealers an ability to quickly install systems, but not have the monitoring part of the business be crushed with high false alarms or have to go back every spring and tweak the system or every fall. And this was our method to do that. And we have live customers both here and in Europe using it. The system's performing very well, just as I showed you. So that's what our system is, and that was our answer for video intrusion detection. Now with that, what I'm going to do is we're going to move from the idea of not just reacting, but how do you sell prevention. So I'm going to transfer the PowerPoint over to Brandon, and he's going to talk a little bit from the monitoring standpoint, like when you get one of these alarms from Agent VI, what do you do with it? How can you sell that? And what are the values that you can present to your customers? So here we go. It's coming your way, Brandon. I think you have the power now.
All right. Thank you, AJ. As was mentioned in the beginning, my name is Brandon Niles. I'm the Director of Operations and Associate Legal Counsel for Acadian Monitoring Services. And we've been doing video monitoring for going on 10 years now. So we've been doing it for a little bit. So when it comes to video monitoring, there's a lot of different names that central stations will put out there on different services. When you boil it all down, there's two core groups of video monitoring. The first group is your basic reaction-based video monitoring. This is any type of video monitoring services that is designed to improve a reaction. So for the most part, your standard video verification is going to fall into this category. You have an alarm panel, you have some cameras, your alarm panel goes off, we look into the cameras to see what's going on. This is great because it's going to improve police response time. Maybe you can prevent the false alarm because you can see it's obviously staff, and then you can look at that and you see, you know what, I'm going to make a couple more phone calls to prevent dispatching. And you can also provide greater detail of what's going on. Keep in mind, though, that this is all taking place after somebody's already breached the perimeter and gotten inside of the location. One such example where this actually can work pretty well is when you have a 24/7 restaurant or you have some small financial institutions, and they might want panic buttons located strategically throughout the location. It is very beneficial when that panic button goes off to be able to look in on the cameras and see what's going on. If you were to do something like that, I do recommend adding a voice down component to it, which will kind of push it into the prevention-based video monitoring, which we're about to get to. But that allows us to hopefully scare somebody out if they're hiding behind a blind spot, which you'll typically find with a basic video verification account from time to time. So let's get to prevention-based video monitoring, which is really the crux of this presentation. So when it comes to prevention-based video monitoring, there's a couple different services that fall into this category. Now, this category is meant to be any sort of event that you could get before the person gets to the actual property or gets to the thing that you don't want them to get to. So imagine you have a region of interest that you're going to put outside of a property, and what will happen is once they get 50 feet away from the property inside that region, it will basically send us an event that, hey, there's a person here. That's going to populate to the operator. The operator is going to take a look at it. On their left screen is going to be the event clip. Sometimes it's 8 seconds. I've seen it get as high as 30 seconds. That's really something that the dealer can decide on what they want to dictate it to be. And then on the right side is actually the live feed. So you look in, and then if you don't like what you see, if it, according to protocol, needs to be a police dispatch or a voice down, you're going to voice down at that time. Some really good examples of where this happens a lot at and where I've seen it be successful is with car dealerships. But really any open area, outdoor inventory business, this is going to be successful. You know, because you can't do a whole lot when it comes to outdoor motion detectors. You're not going to get the sort of reach that you're going to desire to get to the different corners. And with a lot of car dealerships, they might put lock boxes on there with the key in it that people will go by and they can do a smash and grab and you would never catch it. So it's a really good concept for that outdoor inventory because you can cover every edge of that outdoor property and you can protect that. Another really good example that we've done a lot with is monitoring pools at resorts and hotels. So your smaller hotels probably won't want this because the pool is generally set up close to where the office person is or where the front desk manager is. But for a big resort, you have 4 or 5 pools and you don't want anybody in there after midnight. It's great to put your region of interest around the pool, and that way if anybody's in that region after a certain time frame, we can then voice down and scare them out of the pool. That reduces the resort's liability. It also prevents nuisances for the current guests that are staying there. You know, one other great example that's becoming more and more popular as copper theft gets more and more prevalent throughout the U.S. is the monitoring of the construction sites. So I'm sure many of you have heard of these mobile trailers that they'll put up on a perimeter, and then they'll just shoot beams down, and then if anybody crosses the line, it's going to send an event. It's a really effective way of catching somebody, but depending on the location, you could get a lot of alarms because of the traffic and where it's located. So one other thing for prevention-based video monitoring that is becoming more and more popular, and it's a service that really you don't hear too much about, but it's video guard patrols. So if you've got a very high traffic area and you know that you can't really do a loitering rule, or you can't make it work so that a basic event comes in because you're just going to get too many events, a guard patrol every 10 to 15 minutes, or however long you want it to be, is a really ideal way of doing that. I've seen this become very popular in cold weather cities. If you could imagine in your Detroits and your Minneapolis, it gets very cold in the wintertime, And a lot of banks and financial institutions will put covered ATMs out in front of their property. And it's very convenient, and it's great for the people that are using that bank, but it's also a very effective way for homeless people to find shelter. And so what the banks will ask us to do is to look in and to voice down to get them out of there, or to then call the police. It's a really great way to prevent a certain type of behavior. So for this to be successful, though, because there's a lot of things that go into this. This is it's not the most complicated thing in the world, but it's a little different than what you're going to typically get with the basic alarm system. And there really are 5 tenets from the video center standpoint on how to make this effective. They all probably seem pretty obvious to everyone, but you'd be surprised with the issues that we run into when we bring on new accounts. So one of the basic fundamental keys of a successful solution is making sure the equipment is installed in the right location. You don't want there to be blockage. You know, if you're doing a car dealership, you don't want a flag to be in front of it when the wind blows. So you make sure you get the right location, and it has adequate range to get to the far reaches of the property that you're trying to protect. You know, if your analytics can go 400 feet, but your camera is only capable of going 200, it's not going to work. And while a good video monitoring center can compensate for a lot of those deficiencies, it really can't compensate for that, because it can't help for events that it's not going to get because the analytics or the camera wouldn't pick it up. The second thing that's critically important is making sure that the analytics are set up correctly. So as AJ mentioned earlier, there's a lot of self-learning analytics that are coming out that are great, that don't require nearly as much work as some of the other ones, but there's always a little bit of work that's going to be involved with it. You have to keep in mind that for some sites, the actual site might change. You know, a fence line might move. They might decide to put cars into a different area than they currently do. So it's really something that you have to monitor on not a daily, but maybe a weekly basis. And also, I think I speak for most video centers when I say, when you sign the customer up, you want to do 2 to 3 days of testing at the beginning. That gives you, as the installation company, the ability to make sure it's adequately protecting the site, but it also gives the video center the ability to get their analysts truly trained on what's going on at that site. So it gives them a couple days to log in, get comfortable with what they're protecting, and it just makes for a better overall experience, both for you and for your customer. And so this third point, and I'm a little biased here, but I'm going to say that the third point is probably the most important, and that you need to have an open dialogue with the video center to make this prevention-based monitoring solution work. The video analysts that monitor this site every night are going to get more intimate with what's going on at that site than what the installation company ever could. They're going to know when there's issues, when a certain event's not triggering because it's not getting far enough, and it's really key to be in touch with them, to ask them questions, to ask for reports on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or daily, just so that you know what's going on there, so that you don't get blindsided if something were to happen. And so the fourth item actually gets a little closer to the first item, but you need to make sure that the equipment you put in place is adequately there, is adequate equipment to meet the customer's needs. So if you know you're putting a product in to a heavy traffic area, but it doesn't have a loitering rule, whether the analytic or the manufacturer that has analytics on board don't have a loitering rule, you probably want to look at something different. Know the limitations and the strengths of the equipment that you're using, because that will make a big difference in how we can effectively monitor that site. And so the last point, and one I kind of picked up on earlier, is it's very critical to have the voice down component for a prevention-based system. If you don't have the voice down component, all that we could really do as a video center is watch the criminal and the people that are there move from camera to camera. We can't get them off that site. And so if you live in a big city where your response time from the police force is not between 2 and 5 minutes, which from what I've seen, there's a good number of cities that are like that, there's a lot that can take place within that 5-minute to 20-minute time frame for the police to get there. So having that voice down component to scare them off of the lot is truly, truly important to making this solution work. You know, it's great to give them information, but it's better to be able to prevent it from happening. So with that in mind, there are a couple reasons why it's important to choose the right equipment and the right analytic provider. Because as AJ mentioned earlier, if you're not using the right product, you're going to produce a lot of false alarms. And coming from the video center, from what I've seen in the industry, there are 5 ways in which false alarms will actually impact you as the installation company. The first is that you're going to see a lot of excessive signal fees. You know, it's very common to have a 50 to 100 event limit per camera or per site, and then for somebody to charge you anywhere from 10 cents to $1 for an excessive signal fee. So you need to know that that's there, and in doing so, you need to ask questions to find out what constitutes an actual signal. You know, because if a person comes on the site, they may generate anywhere from 10 to 20 signals, depending on how long they're there. So you want to make sure that you're not getting, that's not compounding and actually adding up to a price tag that you have to pay on a monthly basis. So it's critically important that you're aware of what's there. The next tool, and it's not as common as excessive signal fees, but the next tool that the video center will implement to help with false alarms is they will do priority modification. So on the alarm side, there's quite a bit of regulation on what signal types need to come in at what level or what priority. When it comes to video, there really isn't that much regulation, and so it's kind of up to the video center to dictate what signal comes in as a high priority and which one's a low priority. And so what will happen is if your camera is sending in too many false alarms for nuisances, your video center might lower the priority of your camera coming in. So instead of it being 1,000, now it's at a 100. And what that means for you is you're going to end up having a delayed response. The video center has to do that, though, because keep in mind that your false alarms would impact the dealers, other dealers' false alarms, or other dealers' actual alarms, just like their false alarms would impact your actual alarms. So it's very critical to know that that's there. Another tool that the video center has, which will impact you, is camera disarming. So if you have too many false alarms, there's the possibility that they might disarm that certain camera for an extended period of time. I've actually seen it where video centers will implement a progressive disarming schedule. So they'll disarm it for 30 minutes, and then it comes back in and happens again. It'll be an hour, and so on and so on. Obviously, when that happens, there could be the potential for something to get missed, which is not what you want. So those are the 3 main tools that you'll see video centers do to counteract false alarms. But 2 of the big things that could potentially happen to you if you don't choose the right product and modify your settings accordingly is that there could be a potential miss. You know, I'm an operations guy from the video center world, and I wish I could tell you that an operator is going to treat every alarm the same, but human nature tells me that it probably won't be. It's hard to say that a video analyst is going to treat alarm 101 and 102 the same way as alarm 1 and 2 when every alarm in between that was false. You know, I wish I could say that was the case, but I truly don't think that is. And so human nature is a part of this. You know, analytics will only go so far to eliminate the event count. Humans are involved, so you got to do everything you can to limit the amount of work they're doing by choosing the right product. And then the last piece that a video center has in their back pocket to help reduce false alarms is they may just terminate you. It's not very common, but it does happen. On the alarm side, it's common for you to get a 3 to 5 year agreement. You have to meet a certain volume, and you're going to get every sort of deal under the sun. I mean, you read SDM, you're going to see all about that. When you get to the video monitoring world, most video centers won't tie you in long term, or if they do tie you into a long-term contract, they put a clause in there where they can terminate you upon 30-day notice if you're not performing like you should. You know, as I said earlier, your false alarms would impact other dealers' actual alarms, and there's a line there. So it has happened where you may end up getting fired if you can't get that under control. So with that, one thing that I want to kind of jump into is the pricing side of this. Not really part of my presentation, but it's something that always comes up, so I wanted to mention it really quickly. When it comes to pricing, I can't really give you a specific amount of what you should charge because that's going to vary based on the customer, based on the market. It varies greatly. But there really are about two general distinctions that I've seen. So when it comes to video monitoring, you can typically get about 100% markup on your prevention-based video monitoring service. So whatever your video center charges you, you can get about 100% markup on that amount if that account has never had a guard or never had a theft. They're not going to spend as much money because they haven't really seen the impact before. And you know what? I've seen it where it's been under 100% markup, but I've seen it get above that. So it varies, but about 100% is where I usually see my dealers get. Now, when it comes to situations where you have a customer that's had a theft on the site or they've been paying for a guard service, it's not uncommon to be able to get about a 250% markup on that same fee. Like before, I've seen less and I've seen more. So when you look at the value of prevention-based video monitoring, it truly is a great way to both help improve response times with the police force, prevent criminal activity, but also drastically improve the amount of RMR you're getting for a basic video site. And so with that, I am going to pass it back to AJ, and I think we're going to open things up for some questions. And 1 second, AJ, while I pass it back to you.
All right.
All right, it should be there now.
Okay. Yep. Great. All right. Thank you, Brendan. So just to leave this as our cover slide. So just a quick summary of the three things we tried to address today. Video intrusion, both for IP and analog CCTV installations. There's actually a lot even to that topic, so if you want more on that, it'd probably be better to just ask for a call where we could break down your specific system. But our stuff works both with IP and with certain analog systems. The goal of achieving better detection at more locations, less hassle than traditional intrusion alarms, particularly in outdoor environments. That's what we're trying to achieve, and I think Brendan did a pretty good job of the whole idea that if you can move to prevention, you add a lot more value for your client. So that's what hopefully we achieved today in some of the discussion. I know we were at a pretty high level. So as we go to question and answer, I'll also say if we run out of time, we obviously are more than happy to take offline conversations where we can dig a little bit deeper into specific situations or scenarios that you might have. So with that, I'll let Shannon moderate the questions.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, Brandon. So we do have some questions coming in, and AJ, I'll just kind of let you decide who's going to kind of answer first. But one of the questions is, does the central station need special software to handle alerts and alarms?
Okay, so yeah, so I'll address that with a little bit of a bigger answer. So the way Agent VI operates, our Anova product is a service. So there's really two ways that you can actually buy Anova. You can act as an independent installing dealer where you buy Anova, in which case you can point the alarms to any central monitoring service that you can get to agree to handle the video alarms. And then the second way is you can actually buy Agent VI through a reseller like Brandon at Acadian. And I'll just give a pretty much a direct plug for that second model, because when we have agreements like we do with Acadian, obviously they're operating as a wholesaler in volume. Their pricing is very good. They have technical support. So to get right to the specifics of that question, when we package an alarm, we're going to pass the alarm with an 8-second verification clip. We are certified and we operate with IMIX, SureView. We have people using us with Bold and Mastermind, which are two non-video specific but pretty common central monitoring platforms in the industry. But to be really blunt about it, I also have people that their monitoring software is Microsoft Outlook, which I admit kind of shocks me. But that there are people out there they get their alarms in an Outlook folder, and then their operator looks at it and goes, "Oh, what's going on there?" So so there needs to be something receiving it, but that's not usually a real complicated problem. But SureView is very common here in the U.S. Sentinel in Europe is very popular, so we also have integration with Sentinel. So they do need something to receive the alarms, but that's not usually the big limiter in using the service.
Great, thanks, AJ. So the next question is, our R&D was told that the latest version of Agent VI does not yet work with our major VMS partner, Salient. Do you have any idea when it will?
Okay. Oh, whoa, so that's like a party crasher. Okay, so yeah, here for this call, what I didn't say at the beginning is we actually have two product lines at Agent VI. We have our enterprise product, Savvy, which maintains integrations with a lot of VMSs across the industry. It also has, all of the advanced features that, for example, airports, cities, other people want to use. So that question is really more for our Savvy product line, which is an on-premise installed analytics tool. I don't have off the top of my head status on when we'll have integration to the latest Salient. This session, I was actually presenting our cloud-based product, Anova, which was designed specifically for the central monitoring market. And for the most part in this market, to be a little blunt about it, the only VMS I've run into at all was Milestone, and even that was in very limited installations. Most people in this industry aren't using a VMS. They're actually using monitoring software that's more response-oriented. That's why I mentioned Mastermind, Bold. You've got DICE out there. You've got Stages. You've got a whole bunch of companies that make software for response. And then if they want to record video, I find in the monitoring industry, a lot of people will just use DVRs or on-site recording. So I'm not trying to dodge that question. I don't have the answer, but that question is actually related to our enterprise on-site product, Savvy, not the product that we showed today.
Okay, got it. And so I have another question here. What is the price range of your system?
Okay, so the price range of the system, I know it's pretty typical to say, well, it depends. But in this case, it depends. So the way that it is sold as a service, so if you buy the appliance, that price is pretty straightforward. The list price unit one on the appliance is $5.99. Okay. The Anova service is sold as a monthly service per camera. Now, I mentioned a couple minutes ago that the way we sell it is you can either be an independent dealer, in which case your price depends heavily on volume. And I'll just tell you right now, if you're a small dealer with a low camera count, the no commitment, the no commitment, try it. If you don't like it, turn it off at any time price is $20 a month per camera. Because most of the resellers and the large companies we're dealing with are committing to fairly large volumes. So if you're a small dealer, you're pretty much going to get a better price if you buy through one of our resellers who's committing to 1,000 camera quantities versus, but if you're an independent dealer and you want to commit to 500 and 1,000 camera, quantities, that pricing comes down pretty far off of the $20 a month. But if you wanted to just buy it and try it in a limited trial basis as an independent dealer, your price per camera starts at $20 a month.
Thanks, AJ. So I have a couple more questions here. The first is, what are a few of the more popular talk-down methods or manufacturers currently being used for video prevention?
I'll let Brandon speak to that one.
So if you're looking at standalone devices, we have a lot of dealers that will use a company called Digital Acoustics and a device that's their IP7 device. There's also another standalone product out there called 2N. But the majority of what our dealers will use are the actual equipment with audio built in it. So we do integration with Axis and Avigilon and companies like that, where the audio is already going to be integrated in. So it really depends on the product, but we're pretty open when it comes to that component. There's a lot of integrations available.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. And another question here is, does Agent VI just work with Axis cameras?
Okay, so our enterprise on-site product that I mentioned a minute ago, Savvy, that's the you download software, next, install, actually has a large range of cameras that it integrates directly to, where you can be able to you can put the software into the camera. Our Anova product for central monitoring, right now it works with Axis cameras, where you can embed it in the camera. And at the moment it works with that and our appliance, which can work with any camera. We're sort of sticking with that for the moment, because what we found in the monitoring market is people were much less loyal to their camera manufacturers, and there's a lot of analog still out there in the monitoring market where our appliance can actually sometimes work with that DVR without having to upgrade the cameras. So in our enterprise market, for example, when we do large city projects, it's very typical for a city to commit to a particular camera, which then justifies doing an integration to that camera. In the monitoring market, we haven't found anybody committed to any camera. A lot of hike vision, but even that I think is just because they're cheap. So today for Anova, what I showed for this session is Axis plus our appliance. And that seems to be solving a lot of people's needs. There are some other camera manufacturers we're talking with, but again, the business model, it doesn't reward that as much for the monitoring market as it does for the enterprise market with our Savvy product line.
Thanks, AJ. The last question that I have here so far, so just a reminder, if anyone has any more questions, you can still enter them into the question log and we'd be happy to field them. But AJ, the last one here is, will this work with existing analog cameras?
Yeah, so there's two ways that you can work with existing analog cameras. One method that's actually become pretty common, even though I don't get any kickback from Axis for saying this, but Axis has a fairly cost-effective one-channel encoder that you can run our software in, so you can literally just connect that to an analog camera and have it immediately enabled and running with Anova. And then the other method is using our appliance, but then connecting the appliance to the DVR. Now, not all DVRs can do that, but a lot of the newer DVRs can do that pretty well. So that's a way that you can go to an existing site, or if you're looking for upsell opportunities, you can even go to an existing site and say, I can replace your analog cameras with HD analog cameras. The picture quality looks great. You don't have to run new wiring. You replace out the DVR, and you can also add Agency Anova to add monitors to that site. That's a pretty nice upsell package where the customer gets better video, and you can sell them on a monthly RMR to do the monitoring on the cameras. So that second method is using our appliance connected to the DVR.
Great, and I just had another great question come in, AJ, for you. So this person is saying that they have a university with an Avigilon system and they want talk-down capability. Who do I contact for more information because they're looking for a solution?
Yeah, if they want, based on just what's in that question, I would say contact Brandon. Only because the Avigilon systems aren't real open. So if my appliance could work with the Avigilon cameras, you could use Agency I, but they're one of the companies that's sort of known for not, even though they said they were open, not really being that open. But the talk down would certainly be something Brandon could do. And to be fair, he does know the Avigilon system, so he might be able to pretty quickly say what's possible or not with an existing installation of Avigilon, probably even better than I could.
Yeah, just reach out to me on one of my phone numbers or send me an email, and I can give you some information on how that would work utilizing our services.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. So as of now, I don't have any additional questions. I didn't know if AJ or Brandon, you have any last remarks that you wanted to share?
No, I don't think so. I feel like we covered the material that we wanted to cover today. Questions were good. Again, hopefully people who have more specific questions will reach out to us because we can really then unpack different scenarios and help people with their issues. But I hope this has been informative to the attendees.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to thank both you, AJ, and Brandon for all of the information that you've shared with us today. And a special thanks goes to Agency I as well for sponsoring today's webinar. Finally, I'd like to remind everybody that a recording of the webinar and a copy of the PowerPoint presentation is available in our resource library as early as probably tomorrow. We just have to download it from here and get that uploaded onto our site. So that's going to be esaweb.org, and in the members-only resource library. So thank you very much for your participation. We appreciate your time, and we hope you found the content very useful. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.